Well, what's going on, everybody? There is a variation that really hasn't fit in anywhere yet. It's called the Breyer Variation. So I'm going to make a quick video on it. It's probably going to be a 4-minute video. I'm not going to waste any time. Uh, it's E4, C6, D3, and of course, you finish up with the Caro structure with D5. Now, white can't normally develop the knight like he normally does because you would kick it and it would lose tempo. So white develops the first knight to d2. And since the e5 square is up for the taking, you go ahead and reach out and grab it. And just for shits and giggles, it almost looks like a reverse fantasy variation upside down. So from here, white will develop the king's knight to f3, attacking your undefended e-pawn. And we want to defend it. Really shouldn't do the king's or queen's knight because it blocks in your bishop first. So the best way to do it is with your king's bishop. And from here, white will push the d-pawn with a nice little pawn cube in the middle. And nothing really seems to work. You don't want to take on the king's pawn, but it's okay to take on the queen's pawn, the one that they just moved. And they're not going to recapture right away. They're going to take on your d-pawn. And this is a moment where you can play a gambit. You can think of from this position. You really didn't have a spot for your queen's knight. So if you develop your king's knight, hopefully that pawn will take, and then you can develop your queen's knight. Get really fast development for the cost of a pawn. So you take your king's knight out to f6, and when they recapture, you develop with a recapture your queen's knight to c6. You following? From here, white's job is to take out that black pawn in the middle, and it only has one attacker on it right now. And with the move knight to b3, now it has 3 attackers. It opens up the attack from the queen and sets up to attack it itself. So there's no way for us to defend it good. I mean, the only way to triple defend it would be bishop here to c5 or bishop here to e5, and both those would fall to a knight. White's knight would take it out. So from here, we're just going to go ahead and castle. And white is looking to castle as well, so before it takes that pawn, because it knows it has nothing to worry about, it's assuming we have, as black, an easy attack on the king to just move over our rook from f to e and attack the king. So it's going to move the bishop to e2 and look to castle. And while it's doing that, we're going to go ahead and move over that rook to e8, pinning that knight, bishop. So white will castle, get its kings out of harm's way, and from here, what we got from here? After white castles, we're now going to move our... I was thinking it was white's turn again for some reason. I'm like, what? White can just take the pawn. Why doesn't it? Oh, yeah. It's black's turn. Black can move the bishop from d6 to c7, getting it out of the way so the queen opens up. And now white's time to strike and get rid of that pawn. The knight on b3 captures d4. We're going to go ahead and exchange one pair of knights. c6 takes d4. And then f3 takes d4. Now, we don't want to recapture that knight, obviously, because we have nothing to do it freely. I mean, we could technically go in and we would lose our queen for a knight and a bishop, but that's not worth it. So instead, we're going to move our queen to d6, making a battering ram, threatening checkmate on h2. So it's going to move back his knight from d4 to f3, guarding that h2 square. And now Black's queen doesn't want to exchange, so it wants to maneuver to hit it from a different angle. It wants to get its queen to h5, so it does it through the c5 square. And the queen will move from d6 to c5. And this is when white will move up the h-pawn to h3 to prevent the ability to strike it from a vertical angle from h5. It knows what black's up to. So black will go ahead and move its queen from c5 to h5. And that's when white will bring in its bishop from c1 to g5. And this is an awesome move, sacrifice. Black's going to go ahead and kill that h-pawn with his bishop on c8 to h3. And before white captures, doesn't want to recapture yet. It wants to take out the knight. So the bishop on g5 captures f6, and that allows us to take out a pawn and open things up a little more. h3 to g2. The king will recapture, because otherwise it would be threatening checkmate with queen h1. And we totally ignore the bishop next to our king. That's on f6 for a split second. We throw in a check, an in-between move on g4. It's only got one move to go. It's got the h1 square free, and that's when we recheck him with queen to h3. It doesn't want to block it with the knight, because that would be game over. So it moves its king to g1, and that's when we go ahead and capture the bishop now with our g-pawn. And from here, that's where the line ends, but black is looking to move his king from g8 to h8 to allow its rooks in on the g-file and to bring in the dark squared bishop in for the attack. And it should be a easy cleanup from here, even though you're a minor piece down. So if the computer analysis ever finishes calculating, it's like froze right now, it'll show that black has the major advantage, even with a piece down. So this is the Breyer variation. I just had to throw it in somewhere. It really doesn't fit in like chronologically, I guess, with the way I've been uploading the videos with the variations. This is kind of an oddball because it's two pawn moves and white doesn't take the full center like principle says. Like principle says in that second move, you're supposed to take the center if your opponent gives it to you, and they kind of pussyfoot around it. So it is what it is. I appreciate you guys, and I will catch you on the next vid. See ya.